Hello students, this video lecture is for semester 2 students from paper 2, that is drama portion, and the text which is assigned to me is Pygmalion. So I'll give a brief introduction about George Bernard Shaw and then I'll come to the text. Now, you have already studied the plays of Shakespeare, that is Elizabethan drama, and you're also studying Christopher Marlowe's play Dr. Faustus. So, 16th century plays, the plays of William Shakespeare, the plays of Christopher Marlowe, and then coming to Jacobean drama, plays of Ben Jonson, and plays of John Webster, and then a bit later coming to Restoration Age, Comedy of Manners, the plays of William Congreve, Etheridge, etc. Now what happens that after 16th and 17th century, in 18th and 19th centuries, there was a vacuum actually in the domain of drama. We do not have any good play during this period. But in the closing part of 19th century, in the last decade of the 19th century, when George Bernard Shaw came on the stage, we had the flourishing of the drama. All of you are familiar with the term problem play. The plays which dealt with the basic issues of the society. Shaw's name is associated with the problem plays, or the thesis plays, or the didactic plays. Now, when we say problem play, it's a type of drama that developed in the 19th century. And these kinds of plays actually dealt with the controversial social issues in a realistic manner. And the purpose of these plays was to expose the social evils and to stimulate thought and discussion on the part of the audience. We are left with a thought to think over the problem of the society. The genre of the problem play, it had its beginning in the works of the French dramatists. But these problem plays actually got their maturity in the hands of a Norwegian playwright, Henrik Ibsen. And maybe at UG level, you must have studied the play A Doll's House. Now, the plays of Ibsen had the artistic merit and also the topical relevance. When you read the plays of Henrik Ibsen, the first experiment in this genre was Love's Comedy, which was published in 1862, and it's a critical study of contemporary marriage. Now, Ibsen went on to expose the hypocrisy, greed, and hidden corruption of the society in most of his masterly plays. When we come to his masterpiece, that is A Doll's House, it portrays a woman's escape from a childish, subservient role as a bourgeois wife. Now, so that we find that Ibsen actually started these kinds of plays. Ghost, for example, attacks the convention that even loveless and unhappy marriages are sacred. Now, the influence of Ibsen can be seen on the plays of George Bernard Shaw. Shaw brought the problem plays to its intellectual peak. And his plays are actually very significant, very important for their long and witty prefaces. Uh, so, when you read George Bernard Shaw, you find out that when G.B. Shaw started writing, uh, the prominent dramatists during that period were Sir A.W. Pinero and H.A. Jones. Both men were trying to develop a modern realistic drama, but neither had the power to break away from the type of artificial plots and conventional character types expected by theatre goers. Now, the poverty of this sort of drama had become apparent with the introduction of several of Henrik Ibsen's plays onto London stage around 1890, as I have just told you. Now, Shaw, as I have just said, wrote his plays under the influence of Henrik Ibsen. And you just read Shaw's The Quintessence of Ibsenism, which was published in 1891. So we find the influence of Ibsen there. And moreover, his comedy, Widower's Houses, is very much Ibsenite in tone. So, whenever we discuss G.B. Shaw, we are discussing the problem plays. And G.B. Shaw is one of the important playwrights of the 20th century. Now, Shaw is an Irish playwright. He's a literary critic. He's a socialist propagandist. He's an iconoclast. And for his significant contribution in the field of literature, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 1925. Now, in literature, we come across two kinds of schools. One is art for art's sake, another is art for life's sake. Now, when you read the plays of G.B. Shaw, you find that he is the major exponent of art for life's sake. There is one very important statement which was made by George Bernard Shaw. It was for art's sake alone I would not face the toil of writing even a single sentence. I repeat the quote, for art's sake alone I would not face the toil of writing a single sentence. Look at the sentence where he emphasized on the close connection between literature and society. Now, Shaw was a natural literary artist, fettered by reforming zeal, and his plays were a continuous record of the long struggle between artist and the moralist. If you want to summarize the personality of G.B. Shaw, you can say that he was an artist by nature, but a propagandist by profession. He was a great iconoclast, image breaker. He wrote more than 60 plays, including the important plays like Man and Superman, which was published in 1902, Pygmalion, St. John, with a range incorporating both contemporary satire and historical allegory. He became the leading dramatist of the generation. Since Shaw's death, scholarly and critical opinion about his works has varied. But he has regularly been rated among British dramatists as second only to Shakespeare, whom we consider the greatest playwright. Now, he had his extensive influence on the other dramatists. I think you're familiar with the word Shavian. This word is very popular among literary people. Now, when we say Shavian, actually this word entered the language as encapsulating Shaw's ideas and his means of expressing them. Now, when we talk about his influences, Shaw first worked as an art critic, then music critic, and finally from 1895 to 1898 as theatre critic for the Saturday Review. He also founded the Fabian Society, a socialist political organization dedicated to transforming Britain into a socialist state through education. The Fabian Society would later be instrumental in founding the London School of Economics and the Labour Party. Now, so we have the influence of Shaw in the various fields. His expressed views were often contentious, very controversial. He promoted eugenics and alphabet reform and opposed vaccination and organized religion. By the late 1920s, he had largely renounced Fabian Society gradualism and often wrote and spoke favorably of dictatorship of the right and left. Very strange it was, but he expressed admiration for both Mussolini and Stalin. In the final decade of his life, he made fewer public statements, but continued to write prolifically until shortly before his death, aged 94, having refused all state honors, including Order of Merit in 1946. Now, the outbreak of war in 1914 changed Shaw's life. For Shaw, the war represented the bankruptcy of the capitalist system and a tragic waste of young lives, all under guise of patriotism. He expressed his opinions in a series of newspaper articles, which proved to be a disaster for Shaw's public stature. He was treated as an outcast, and there was even talk of his being tried for treason. As I told you that he wrote many plays, but we have a collection of plays called Plays Unpleasant and Pleasant. Now, we have a group of 3 plays under the group Plays Unpleasant. Number 1 is Widower's Houses, which was published in 1892. The Philanderer, which was published in 1898. Mrs. Warren's Profession, which was published in 1898. In the category of plays pleasant, we have The Man of Destiny, published in 1897. Arms and the Man, 1894. Candida, 1898. You Never Can Tell in 1897. Now, both groups of plays were revised and published in a collection of plays called Plays Pleasant and Unpleasant, published in 1898. Now, when we say plays unpleasant, the meaning is that in those plays, Shaw wanted to bring before us the unpleasant or the bleaky side of the society and dealing with those themes in his plays and leaving with the audience to think over. There are some more important plays of Shaw. One, we have The Devil's Disciple, which was published in 1897. Caesar and Cleopatra, 1901. Man and Superman, where he discussed the theory of life force in 1903. Major Barbara, 1905. The Doctor's Dilemma, where he deals with the medical profession in 1906. Androcles and the Lion in 1912. Pygmalion, the play which is prescribed in the courts, 1913, back to Methuselah in 1921. Now, it's quite difficult for me to give you the feel of the classroom teaching, but I'm trying my best to create the ambience of the class. Again, it's not an easy task to give my lecture for 50 minutes because of the connectivity and because of the problems of the internet. So very briefly, I have brought before us some basic facts which are related to the TV show, and my next lecture I'll tell you something about the play Pygmalion. Thank you very much.